I went to Answers in Genesis, and I guess for the sake of this conversation, they're a big player and potentially a big, I don't know, quote unquote adversary to your perspective, but that young earth creationists are deceiving people, and that's extreme language. But and it kind of leads to this, what Seth and I are running into, and we mentioned Mark 10:6, and I don't want to I want to make sure that because one of the things I pulled, I went to Answers in Genesis, and I guess for the sake of this conversation, they're a big player and potentially a big, I don't know, quote unquote adversary to your perspective. But one of the things they put is that Jesus was a young earth creationist. How do you respond to that? And the reference they use is Mark 10:6, which again, like you said, I don't know if I completely understand. But how would you respond to somebody who said, well, Jesus was a young earth creationist?
I mean, they're just reading what they want to see into the text. Like I don't know any other way to say it, but it's eisegesis, like pure and simple. Like you're just reading your own conclusion into the text. So Jesus doesn't say the age of the earth anywhere. And again, just appealing to, it's like, well, when we say in the beginning, we mean the 6 days of creation. Well, yeah, that's what we're referring to is the 6 days of creation that God created from the earth and matter that was already there. So the fact that God creates in 6 days doesn't mean anything for the age of the earth. And the idea that it's like, oh, Jesus is a young earth creationist, like, all right, cool. Give me a proof text. It's like, oh, but in the beginning, created mankind. Is like, okay, cool. Like, again, just goes back to, it's like, there's just nothing. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't like that argument when I read it.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this kind of goes into, you said this right at the outset, that young earth creationists are deceiving people, and that's extreme language. But I mean, it kind of leads to this, what Seth and I are running into, and we're more open and to these types of questions. We're just trying to learn because we were certainly raised in a young earth creationist household and perspective. So
you guys, no,
yes, us definitely. We were young earth to it, but it was also, it's just, it's kind of just, you assume that it's you assume that that's all there is, really. And that's because people like Answers in Genesis, to your point, are deceiving people into thinking that way, that you have to believe this. And so, I don't know, I was wondering, Adam, how do you think they're deceiving people, or what's or maybe this is a separate question, but what's the motivation behind deceiving people, deceiving believers?
So deceiving is a very heavy language, and I do not want to label that on everyone that's in the Answers in Genesis camp. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first part. So
yeah, you could soften it if you want to. It doesn't have to be deceived, maybe misguiding or misleading.
There is a degree. There are some degrees which I am very, very skeptical that some of it is not much more outright. And if I ever got the time, I don't know. I would love to do a documentary, and I would love to get behind the scenes, get some deeper interviews to hammer out some stuff. But here are some of the parts, as far as I understand, and when I've done any investigations in which these are my understandings, and this is where I think things are incredibly, where you get into, it's like, oh, they're misleading at best and outright deceiving you at worst. Okay, it would be this area, one of these areas. There's more, but science. Do Answers in Genesis, do they make you think that there are scientific answers for young earth creationism and their views? Yes or no?
Yeah, they would like you to think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. If they had no Bible, would they still come to the conclusion that the earth is young based on science alone?
No.
I mean, I would only say potentially yes, because they use such a I mean, I feel like they use their own interpretation of science. Like they use their science backwards, but I don't know, maybe not. I just feel like their science is it's such a narrow way to use science. They come to certain answers with these questions. So I don't know, but you're asking good questions, and Seth's probably going to win again.
Yeah, and every single one of them that I've asked so far, the answer is no. The answer is no. Yeah.
And they're doing science
And, yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And even Jason Lyle, who is one of the strongest proponents for young earth creationism and everything like that, he said, yeah, outside of a biblical box, you would not or could not come to a young earth interpretation. Ken Hovind said it too on his debate with Destiny. Anyone can go and look it up. Unfortunately, you can't clip it, but you can look it up. In his debate with Destiny, he said he cannot prove young earth creationism through science. Okay, so what kind of science are you talking about then? How is it scientific evidence if you take away the Bible and your scientific evidence disappears?
It's not. It's
That's
just
not.
It's a presupposition.
You've decided this is the begin point, and now you eliminate any information that is to the contrary. There's nothing scientific about that. That is extremely disingenuous. And to me, my primary point is that the vast majority of young earth creationists do not know that. So I don't know how else to put it, but when I studied cults, that's the deal, right? Is that the cult leader at the top, he knows everything. After that, it's way more diluted, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else really believes it, but they don't know that some of the things that he says are not really based in reality. And then, of course, down at the lowest level, they don't know any of it, right? They're way less clueless. And so I would love to see, and I know, look, I have friends that are young earth creationists, several of them, but part of my major thing is that I think that most of them, they're not aware of the facts. And that's the point. That's why I want education of the facts. If we can all sit here and agree on the facts, then we can go somewhere. But if you can't even agree to what is the truth, then we're in big trouble. And the point is this, if you're telling everybody, we have scientific evidence, we have scientific evidence, we have scientific evidence, but not a single person outside of your group can see it. What kind of scientific glasses are you wearing? Right? And then they just try and poison the well by saying that's because everybody else is possessed by evolution and the demon that's lurking behind every closed door. And it's like, okay, they're good Christian scientists, and they're also saying no. Hugh Ross's quote that he uses anyway, it's from somebody else, but he said, like, there's more scientific data for a flat earth than there is for a young one. And he as well, like my major thing that was extremely eye-opening to me was that when I started to listen to Ken Ham, Jason Lyle, all these people, and they admit outside of the Bible, they would not come to the conclusion of a young earth. That's devastating. How can you possibly come and tell me about science? Why are you talking to me? I don't understand. So that's why I do sometimes say that to me, it's deceiving. It's deceiving at worst. And the fact that, they know that they can't make a scientific case. Sure, scientists come to faith. They believe the Bible. That's great. And our scripture should be our authority. But if they've mistakenly made a biblical translation and you're basing all of your scientific data on a faulty biblical understanding, okay. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm a little bit more passionate about some of this stuff, because it's one thing to be like, have a different view. It's another thing to be purporting something that everybody else doesn't understand. They're taking completely different view. So,
and I think, one of the things that was a great, I don't know if you brought this up, Adam, in the debate or afterwards in your recap, but I know historically we've seen this happen before with the geocentric interpretation of the Bible that everyone held, which was, and they use scripture to justify this belief, and they, persecuted Galileo over it, which is that, the Bible has to be the center of the universe because the pillar of the earths or whatever verse. And now you ask Christians that today and they're like, no, science is this. Like they that's not even a question in their mind. They just agree with the science there. And it seems like there's a parallel to what young earth creationism is kind of playing by the same playbook as those that persecuted, especially those that are in power, those that persecuted Galileo, which was saying you're violating some sort of Christian doctrine by introducing the science and the scientific reading, which is apparently violating some sort of interpretive reading of scripture.
100%. If you're a young earth creationist, you should be a geocentrist, period. Every young earth creationist should be a geocentrist. If you are not a geocentrist, it is because you have allowed science to change your mind. That's it. Pure and simple. There is no other biblical explanation. There's 10 times the data for biblical data on geocentrism than there is a young earth. I can make way more arguments, concerning that idea. When you talk about let's read Joshua and the sun stood still. This was the biblical argument back then, right? Very, very strong argument. I mean, everywhere you look in scripture. Oh yeah. The sun did this. The sun did this. The sun rises. The sun falls. Every time you see the sun setting, guess what? That's proof of the sun moving in the Bible. How else can you read it? There's so much more biblical evidence for a geocentrism and the sun moving around than there is a young earth. And so if you're not a geocentrist, but you're still a young earth creationist, it's because you're inconsistent. It's because you've allowed science to influence your interpretation of the Bible. And you know what? You should allow science. You know what? The only reason that we understand, that, we're not the center of the universe is because of science. And we understand these things to be